Well, good morning, early afternoon on the East Coast, and we are doing a special breaking news version of the College Football Express. I'm joined by my friend from the College Football Mafia crew, Daniel Gygax. How are you doing this morning, Daniel?
Another fun day and no real shocks on the poll. I mean,
No real shocks in the poll.
no.
If you're looking for conspiracy theories or the fun of hey, polls shouldn't happen till week 7 because narratives are set, you definitely were fulfilled. So we'll go into all of that, regardless of which side of the conversation you are on. Like the polls are the polls, and people are going to do them, no matter what happens. So in case you haven't gotten a chance to see them, we will throw up what the AP just dropped. And essentially, at the very top level, you have Texas remains number 1. Penn State and Ohio State, they flip spots. Clemson moves into the top 5. Notre Dame moves out. Overall, and we'll get into it, we'll put the polls up side by side. The only newcomer here is Oklahoma. So they go from not being in the coaches poll at all. I think they were just outside. They might have been like the first on the other receiving votes, if I remember, and we'll see it again in a second, to number 18. The AP writers apparently figured out that BYU has a questionable quarterback room, but so they moved out, but they're still number 26, still ahead of Utah. So all of those type of complaints still exist. So Daniel, from your perspective, top level, when you saw the poll today, this morning, after a week ago, we saw the coaches poll, what were just your initial reactions? Was there anything interesting? Was it completely expected? Any little tweaks that you found noteworthy?
Ole Miss, the coaches poll had Ole Miss. Let me pull that up real quick. Coaches poll had Ole Miss 15. That's quite a bit of a gap, but I mean, it's preseason polling. I mean, there hasn't been. I mean, we're still 12 days away from a football game. I mean, a
Right.
lot can happen in 4 months of football.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean,
I get all of the stuff about people being worried that it sets a
yeah,
narrative for the college football playoff committee. But if the AP didn't do it, if the coaches didn't do one,
yeah,
13,000 other people would do them. And then we would all talk about them. I mean, you look at On
yes,
3, half of their graphics come outside of the recruiting side, come from them
yeah.
doing an article and a graphic on somebody else's article and poll or analysis or a hot coach list. Often you'll see them do like the CBS thing. And I don't, it's the off season. People want to talk about things. They're going to speculate. We're all not going to sit here in a vacuum and not talk about it. But I do understand the concern that this collective thing infiltrates the minds of the voters on the committee and could even influence, people who are doing things more statistically. Maybe they favor one metric differently because of just what they think is important relative to a conference league or team that they follow or respect.
Every year you'll have a unranked team go into the top 10. Every year you're going to have a top 10 team in the preseason fall out. It happens every year. Things are going to get shuffled. I mean, heck, week 1, you've got Ohio State, Texas. Somebody's got to lose
Right.
that game. Somebody's going to drop in rankings. Not much, but somebody's going to drop. Uh,
Yeah, I always find those
you've
the
got
most
you've
interesting.
got yeah, you've got Miami, Notre Dame. Somebody's got to win. Somebody's got to lose, and somebody's going to drop.
And then you're already getting into the conversation of, well, if you lose to somebody that's highly ranked
Yes,
and it's a close game, how far do you fall? And if you're,
true.
let's use Miami and Notre Dame. There's I believe still 3, maybe a new one enter, but I think there's 3 or 4 top 25 versus top 25 matchups between week 0 with Farmageddon, which is now a bigger game even than
Yes,
it already was, because you have Kansas State moving up 3 spots. They're actually the biggest mover up,
yes,
other than Oklahoma entering the poll from nowhere to number 18. Outside of that, people who were on the last poll, Kansas State is playing Iowa State. Miami plays Notre Dame. We got Texas at Penn State. I believe that might be it for week 1. But if if you were Ohio State and Texas playing in week 11 and somebody beat the other team by 1 point, I bet you they maybe dropped 2 spots, maybe 3, depending upon everything.
Well,
In week,
you do have some recency bias that goes into the poll. So
right,
week one loss. Let's say Texas, Ohio State. It's won by a last second field goal. By the time December rolls around, is anybody going to remember that game? Well, they're going to remember it being a close game, but they're not going to hold it against whatever team loses. And
right.
that's the reason why, like, if you have an early season loss, I mean, look at Notre Dame last year. They lost to Northern Illinois and they made the playoffs.
Yeah, but I also think it works in reverse a little bit because this poll is so new and not based on a lot of things.
Yes.
A 3 losing to a number 1 in the beginning of the year is more likely to drop more spots than they would probably do later in the season. Same matchup, same game, same results, but with more of a body of work, more of the shuffling already happened. They tend to move. Like, how far does let's say Texas loses? How far does Texas, a consensus number 1, basically everywhere, whether you agree with it or not, that is the thing. If they were to lose to Ohio State at Ohio State, where does a 0-1 Texas team go versus where they would go if for some reason this was a conference matchup in week 11?
They might fall out of the top 5. They might go to maybe a 7, but they're not going to drop that much. I mean, it really just depends on what everybody else does, and that's the big thing. You're looking at games don't happen in a vacuum. I mean, like I said, you've got Notre Dame playing Miami. That's a top 10 matchup. That game right there, whoever wins that, I mean, whoever loses that, I should say, you're going to see shuffling happen there. You've got Farmageddon. That's a week 0 game now. That's going to shuffle things around. I mean, the way that polling does, you look at polling, I mean, I've said my opinion. I don't think that rankings should come out until October, like the first weekend of October. But I mean, like you said, everybody's going. I mean, we did preseason picks. We went through there and said who we thought was going to win what in each conference. Everybody does it. So to sit there and say the AP or the coaches shouldn't go out and do it, that's being hypocritical.
Yeah, like I just the answer isn't for everybody else not to do polls. It's to have the playoff committee make sure that they're doing things in a way that removes as best as possible biases in a world where you can never completely remove biases from people, even subliminally, right? Like that's not going to solve anything again because somebody else will just become the new McDonald's on the corner of polling. If you're watching over on X, consider coming over to the YouTube channel CFB Express and jump into the chat. Tell us what you're thinking. Throwing up a comment here from Shonsky, BYU football. Michigan should be down in the 20s somewhere, in my opinion. They are replacing a lot on defense and a true freshman quarterback. I mean, there's several, inexperienced quarterbacks all over here.
Yes.
Arch Manning obviously played a bunch of games, so it's a little bit of an outlier, but technically didn't start a full season yet. If you look at Ohio State, you have a pretty untested quarterback coming in. Georgia's got an untested quarterback. Notre Dame, I don't even know if we know who the quarterback is yet. So
I don't think they've announced anything.
I think everybody thought it was going to be CJ Carr, but either misinformation or a true quarterback battle has broken out there, and that isn't settled.
Yeah,
Oregon has a new quarterback situation going on there. Alabama has an experienced quarterback, Ty Simpson, but they have some fresh talent. Garrett Nussmeier, you're golden. But anyway, the point being, I don't even know whether true freshmen versus no fresh, how
Yeah.
much of a difference that will or won't make. I think it depends upon the player. But there's a lot of questions, I guess, at quarterback where people are making an operating assumption that highly recruited player like Arch Manning, of course, with multiple games of experience, a lot of Texas fans would tell you that he should have kept the job last year and the outcome would have been different. But it is a good point, and that's like the whole point of preseason polls is we really don't know. Our friend Fergie in the Buff side says, "Good morning, boys. Beautiful day in Denver. 74 degrees, sunny, and 33% humidity. Sco Buffs. I still trust coaches over media due to narratives, even though SIDs likely
Yeah.
submit the votes."
It really
You know,
is. I'm trying to remember which coach it was that said, "I only watch my." I want to say it was James Franklin. I only watch my game. I'll watch a couple of the conference games, like who we play coming up, but I don't watch that many games. I have somebody else help me, which basically is the SID that fills that out for the coaches poll,
right.
or somebody
And
on
I
the
think
SID staff.
I believe that well, that's my question to you then, Daniel. So
Hmm.
if you trust the coaches poll more, whether it's the coaches or the SIDs, they we admit that there are biases out there
Yes.
for all of this stuff. Um, how do you reconcile everybody thinking the SEC is overrated and too much things and it's the narrative with the coaches poll last week, or their sports information directors who most of the poll coaches, I think it's like 11 or 12% of the votes, or give or take, or SEC coaches or SEC programs, whoever
Hmm.
did the vote. You still had 9 teams in from the SEC, right?
Yes.
So if everybody was trying to like compel, say that it was overrated and what's the narrative, you still had, if we trust that poll more, we had 9 SEC schools in there. We now, I believe, with Oklahoma moving in, BYU moving out, the AP has fully 40% of their poll is there, but it's not that off in terms of SEC schools, right? For the
True.
ACC, the total remains the same. Big Ten total remains the same, and the Big 12 goes, I think, down from 5 teams
So
to
four.
four
Yes.
teams. Though they have more
BYU
teams.
drops.
They have more team. Kansas State has moved up.
Yeah.
Arizona State, I believe, moved up a spot or two. So they have probably a
No,
higher.
Arizona State stayed the
They were
same.
11,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
For some reason, I
11.
thought they were 12, but it's right there in front of us. But Kansas State moves up from 20 to 17, so
Yeah.
the average is higher overall, but there's less teams populating it. But how do you reconcile that? If it's all not true,
I mean,
80%.
you reconcile it by the schedule just playing out, just the season playing out. I mean, you're sitting there looking at who you think is going to be good this season. Is a lot of this preseason polling. I mean, I remember for years and years and years, whenever Steve Spurrier had a vote, he would always give Duke a vote because that's where he got his start coaching at. And Duke would be like, I don't know, like the season before, they would be like 1-11 or 2-10 or whatever, and they would always have one vote from Spurrier just due to the fact that that's the preseason poll. He said it didn't matter.
Right. Shonsky comes back up BYU football, but Rock, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Oregon, Alabama, etc. Yes, they are freshmen, but they aren't true freshman quarterbacks. They have been in college football for a year or two. Yeah, I'm not
True.
saying that there's no validity there, but I think if you even just look at the NFL the last couple of years, right, you have a couple of players who their first year in the NFL had the right coaching, right experience coming into the NFL that they
Yeah.
made a massive impact the first year. I just think that when you talk about Michigan, would it surprise? It wouldn't surprise me if the number one guy getting paid that much actually joins Michigan and has a really good year. Any more that it wouldn't surprise me if Gunnar Stockton does, or CJ Carr, or whoever it might be in there. I just think it's a little bit different. You're in an era now where the best players have been having their own personal quarterback coaches for multiple years, but at the same time, being in a system, learning the offense certainly matters at the end of it. Look, I can understand any argument for Michigan being ranked lower. I don't think I'm not necessarily even arguing against our friend Shonsky at BYU football there that they're in the right spot. For me personally, I think that Ole Miss is better ranked now in the AP poll. 21 sounds more to me where they should be. Again, it's all relative.
It's all
Tennis,
subjective.
yeah,
Yeah.
Tennessee, seems more reflective of their quarterback room, of us not really knowing. For all we know, it's great with all of the changes and swapping wives that they did with UCLA. But at the end of the day, they have a transfer from Appalachian State who's now their quarterback. Will that be good for them? As maybe a Liberty quarterback going to Colorado could potentially be another team that isn't ranked. I know our friend
Fergie.
Fergie will have a feeling that, and I don't even know if that quarterback situation is truly settled either,
Yeah.
according to Dion, whether that's,
The
again, a real quarterback
the
battle or
only
not. I'm
one
not
that
sure.
I see in the top 10 that has a returning quarterback, Drew Allard at Penn State. I mean, if you look at Texas with
You got Garrett
Manning,
Nussmeier at LSU.
yeah, but oh yeah, that's right, yeah, yeah, I forgot about him. I was sitting there looking there, it's like, wait a second, yeah, he started last year,
Yeah,
but
and you have Carson Beck, who's clearly, from all
he,
indications, is
but
healthy
he
as
was at
hell right now. But
yeah,
he
but
was
he
not
was
at
at Georgia.
Miami.
Yeah, he was at
Right, so you don't have
Georgia.
the exact same system. The only ones who have like two true returning, well-regarded quarterbacks with a lot of game experience under them in the top 10 is Penn State and LSU.
Yeah,
Arizona State also
yeah,
has that benefit. South Carolina does as
yes,
well. You know, when you get to apparently all-world god DJ Lagway at Florida Gators, a lot of talent there, but it wasn't like the full start of the
yeah,
entire year. But most of the year, especially when they were coming back, some health questions there. But there's definitely a mix of it. You know, if I had to choose one of these two polls, I would choose the AP poll as I think the most accurate overall relative to positions for everybody. I think you can certainly argue about whether or not other teams deserve to be in. We can just go back real quick and looking at the
hmm
others receiving votes. To me, the team and it's on both categories, both the coaches poll and the AP poll. The team that I think is going to have the chance to really wreak havoc with this poll and be pretty well regarded at the end of this year, I think is for me is Louisville personally. I
yeah,
think they have a great coach. I think Miller Moss is going to do tremendous things with that coach. I think it's a very interesting thing that can make Lincoln Riley look bad. Should he take Miller Moss and do more with him than USC does this year? For you, which of the teams that were in the just missing getting into the top 25 category are the ones that you have your eye on as likely not only to make it in towards the bottom of this poll, but you think are probably really underrated when the season's said and done?
um, almost said BYU, but we have no idea who's going to be starting quarterback there. Uh, I'm going to sit there and say probably Baylor. Baylor. Everybody had Aranda on the hot seat, and everybody thought that he would be the first coach fired from the Big 12 last year. He turned it around. They hit the portal very hard. They got some pretty good talent. Their their schedule is okay. I think that they could make some noise. Um, Georgia Tech could make noise. Georgia Tech played great last year, and there was some really bad calls in that Georgia game. That right there, I want to say in like the fourth or fifth overtime, there were a couple really bad calls, and Georgia Tech
Yeah.
should have won that.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia Tech, I think, has a lot of potential this year.
Yes.
Baylor, I love their quarterback. I am way down on Dave Aranda. I knocked him down in my preseason,
Yeah.
which is really like who I think is going to finish where at the end of the season, not preseason polls, because they just don't believe in Aranda. They had a really bad injury for their number. They have an All American running back, but their number 2 running back was a stud too, and he's out for the year. So that's going to put either a little bit more workload on their number 1 guy, or we'll see if somebody else steps up. So I'm a little bit less skeptical of Baylor. Wild Utah's convinced me more about Utah, but I don't necessarily feel like they're completely being, ignored right now. Georgia Tech is a big.
The guy that they brought in from New Mexico last year, he threw more interceptions than touchdowns. And they brought in New Mexico's offensive coordinator. They brought in the whole entire, a lot of players out of New Mexico. I still have a lot of questions on Utah. Yes, their defense is going to be good. Yes, their offensive line is good. But a lot of those skill positions, I mean, they're going to win games just because their defense is good.
Talk about being disrespected. Penn State with all their returners and an established quarterback isn't ranked number 1. Clemson 2.
It doesn't matter. It's we're talking. It's August. They'll be fine.
Yeah, I think the Penn State questions are twofold. Not so much all those experienced returners. It's, can Franklin win the big one, and did they do enough in their wide receiver room to give Aller the tools he needs to replace the talent? And they lost some monsters on that team, right? So they have a ton of talent coming back. Clemson, I think, is people not paying attention enough to how much they did bring back and some of the gaps that they have filled through development. But I understand that as well. I do want to jump to just a chart and just to bring this up. So this is, if you look at the 2 polls together, this is how close each poll is to each other. It's a little bit hard to see, but you see the biggest outliers are Tennessee and Ole Miss, who are 6 spots down overall. But it's a pretty straight line in terms of the 2 polls and how relative they are to each other. Again, 12 teams are on the line together. Gixxer Squad brings up an interesting point, which would be something to maybe pull up down the road. Is funny how the poll is nearly parallel to the top 25 programs by NIL valuation.
It always has been.
I don't know, but I think it is at the top. I don't know whether it. No. I don't know. I'm guessing it's not as you go further down, because, like, for example, in the Big 12, only I think Texas Tech is in the top 25 NIL valuations. I could be wrong about that.
BYU
but you have 14.
I can't remember where BYU finished ranked on it, but they spent a lot of money this offseason.
Yeah, they did, but they're still, it's relative to where they were. They have to keep doing that. They spent more on basketball. But that might be an interesting thing, is to do 2 things. Plot this with the blue chip ratio, right? Which is the recruiting 4-year rolling that doesn't account for even the old one that doesn't account for the transfer portal in and out, and to do the NIL valuation. It will be interesting to see how well that matches up. Where does it change? Ferg is another idea to see a range chart that shows the lowest and highest level of votes in both polls with the median ranking, which would be what would be the posted ranking. More of a combine all the people out there. Maybe it covers for people who just front load with the obvious names.
Yeah. I haven't seen the breakdown of each voter yet. That usually should be out sometime around now, where it shows.
Yeah, the coaches one is out. I haven't seen the Associated Press version yet.
Yeah.
Let's see if it's live anywhere. Hold on.
Yeah. But okay. Oh, Shonsky, BYU's 26th in money. I mean, I always look at terms of baseball whenever it comes down to money. How much money did the Mets spend a couple years ago, and how far did they get into the playoffs? They didn't make it. They spent
they spent a ton of money this year, and they're on a 7-game losing streak.
They spent $500 million. What was it, 2 years ago in free agents, something like that? It was quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
And I mean, money helps, but you still have to be able to coach them up. You still have to find talent that'll work your system.
If I'm not mistaken, and it's hand grenade close. If
Yeah,
we looked at last year's polls at this time, by the time we finished up the season, I want to say it was at least 20% of the people on this poll will not be here when the
about
season's over.
about
I remember some very specific ones like LSU not finishing in the top 25 after not having the season that they were expecting to. Obviously, they have a lot bigger expectations. Is there what teams on here that aren't just like on the fringes do you think is so widely overrated or just has a brutal schedule that they're you know one unexpected loss, one bad injury with a key player away from being the team or teams that are not going to be here when we get to January or December, really?
I could sit there and pile on A&M. I mean, they always underperform. Um, Florida, I'm kind of shocked that Florida is ranked as high as they are. Their schedule's fairly tough, and on top of that, um, I thought Florida was going to clean house. If you asked me a year ago, I thought that every single coach, manager, whatever there at Florida would be gone for this year. I mean, uh, I have questions on. I got questions on South Carolina because South Carolina is, yes, it's a Shane Beamer did a great job last year, but we pulled up their schedule before. Um, Fairly tough. Like I said, we could always pick on A&M.
Yeah.
That's an easy pick on because they always have great recruiting rankings. They always do great in the portal, and they're 8-14.
Yeah, I would say, I'm a that always only includes 1 year of Mike Elko. I think he's a really good coach. I don't know that they'll be, 10-2 or 11-2, 11-1 or anything, but I don't necessarily expect them to fall off here. I also don't expect them to go into the top 10 personally. I don't have them in the playoffs. Gixxer Squid talks about Illinois being one and done. I don't think Illinois is one and done. I actually think Illinois is like team 3 or 4 in the Big Ten this year. Personally,
Now, if you told me Indiana was,
I
I could
might buy that a
into
little bit
that.
more, but I don't know how much my bias because I respect their coach. I just don't like him, and you can Google the reasons why.
Oh, Signetti or
Yeah, he's
Burke?
just not my guy. The for me, the one like the biggest wild card here really is Oklahoma, where I wouldn't be stunned if they came back with the overhaul of their offense, and I wouldn't be stunned if Venables is fired this season. Like they're hard for me
Yeah,
to really read because they've done a lot of the right things, but again, it's another head coach that
yeah.
I'm not buying
I
in a
bought
super tough conference.
whenever we had the SEC preview show, we had Jason Watkins on there, and I brought up Venables. Yeah, I completely forgot about Klubnik. Brought up Venables, and he's like, "Well, I don't think the seat." He was talking, it's like how hot the seat was, and I'm like, from a view from a non-fan of Oklahoma, I think that is probably the hottest seat out there because he if he goes 7-5, 6-6, I that whole entire staff's going to be gone.
Yeah.
They they it might be. I mean, it's an extremely hot seat. So let's say they go 9-3, miss the playoffs. Venables coming back. Let's say they go 7-5, go to the I wouldn't know. Let's say go to the Citrus Bowl. He's gone. He won't even coach the Citrus Bowl.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting season for Oklahoma,
Hmm.
and valid point. Who are the backup quarterbacks for these teams? If these quarterbacks miss any time, some of these teams might be screwed. Yeah, I mean, a lot of teams would be screwed, even if you have a 4 or 5 star quarterback in waiting that you're very high on. That's just the reality of that position. Same thing happens in the NFL.
Yeah.
There's very few Texases out there, and not because they don't have talent available, but that you can feel confident that that talent could ascend and take over and match what they had before. But there's a lot of competent quarterbacks that are going to be on everybody's radar next year, right?
Mhm.
It's the natural turns. But yeah, a lot of these teams would not be able to handle the expectations of their program relative to an injury like losing their starting quarterback, even if their starting quarterback isn't necessarily expecting to get a seat in New York for the Heisman ceremony with the preseason predictions.
There's
But
a reason why. There's a reason why these guys are QB1, and
right,
that's
for
because
sure.
they're the best quarterback on the team, and uh, there might not be a lot of fall off, but he's QB2 for a reason.
Yeah. So for me, I know there are people who are going to be upset about the rankings. This is confirming their bias. I don't really have major objections. I think you can argue for swapping anyone towards the back with any of those first 5 missing votes. There's a couple of teams I think are getting a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt to be here than maybe they deserve. But to me, it's the same thing about arguing about the college football playoff. If like you came in 12th, 13th, 14th, got bumped for the G5 to bump up, like I don't really want to hear the tears that much. You lost it on the field. This is different, right? But those teams will all have a chance to move up. I don't think it has sealed the fate of who's going to make the college football playoff. I'm actually an outlier this year. I think that there's going to be there's going to be a very strong chance for both the ACC and Big 12 to get 2 teams in, and that the other 2 conferences only get 3. I could either be a genius or an idiot. We'll find out. But any last thoughts, Daniel, on the poll before we wrap it up? And thanks everybody for coming over. If you're on Twitter, think about coming over and subscribing to the new channel. If you want me to call it X to get a subscription, I will do that. Thanks to the guys who have jumped in the chat. But like my final thoughts on now that we have the 2 main polls out before the one that we all care about and matters hits in whatever that is, week 6 or 7.
Like I said, no shocks on the poll. I mean, so Penn State is now 3rd instead of 2nd. I mean, it's August. The poll that really matters is in December.
And Clint brings up a good point. Parity doesn't really help the Big 12 during the preseason polls. I mean, there's a lot of parity in the SEC. I think it's the perception issue, right? And then the parity hurts. I think it would be fantastic for the Big 12 to solve that problem that Clint brings up if 2 teams really did emerge, right? Ideally, if they weren't on the same, if they didn't meet each other into the playoff, right? If they just coincided that the uneven scheduling led down that road, that would be the best case scenario for the Big 12. I don't have everybody's schedules nailed down, but like if, for example, Arizona State and K-State don't play this season or something like that, so that game happens, so that you basically get a Clemson versus SMU scenario in the ACC championship game where you're unlikely to get your winner knocked out and they both go pretty, undefeated, maybe only 1 loss heading into that game. That's what I think you want to solve the problem that Clint's bringing up. Question for me was from Fergie is, are you happy with Miami at number 10? I'm happy with it. Like if you had him at 15, if you had him at 18, I'm much higher on this team going into the season than I was last year's team. Everybody has recency bias with Cam Ward, and they have recency negative against Carson Beck. Last year at this time, Carson Beck was a presumed number 1 quarterback for the NFL draft in 2026. He got hurt. He still has 68% lifetime completion rate, and I know he's not hurt. The program I have access to, that is one. So I'm fine with it, right? They have to win. It doesn't matter if they don't beat Notre Dame. It doesn't matter if they lose to Florida at home, even though those 2 games may not matter ultimately for their fate because they could still go on to win against the ACC championship. I think Clemson is going to the national title game personally. So I don't expect Miami to win the ACC championship, but I do want them to get there. So I'm fine with the 10. It seems to be the consensus. My only issue with polls is when anybody has Florida ahead of Miami. I just don't get it. I don't see that roster. I don't see DJ Lagway, as good as he is, being ahead of being able to drive the difference there when they're playing Miami at home. In week 3, but ultimately I'm cool. Any last comments there from you, Daniel?
No, just like if Miami beats Notre Dame, should move them in top 5. Should. It, like I said, it all depends on everything else that happens that week. I mean, you could have all sorts of weird things happen during games. I mean, that's the reason why they're played.
Yep. Yeah. For me as a Miami fan, I'm the most worried about the Louisville game. That's the game that I'm the most concerned about ultimately, is that game. I could be wrong. I'm not as I think the Notre Dame game is going to be great, but I actually am more worried about Louisville game ultimately. Whether that's delusion, you can fill in the blank there. But with that, we are now 18 days till Farmageddon, a number 22 versus number 17 ranked game now. For that, and since I still have to do a little bit Miami, even though we're a national channel, it is 26 days till Notre Dame at Miami. So for Daniel Gygax, thank you very much for joining us. Please go follow him on social. Check him out on the College Football Mafia channel. He does a lot of great shorts there. Yeah, you'll see him on other shows throughout the week. You can see me on Moen After Dark there as well. These guys will have a Big Ten preview show coming up on Wednesday with a few other of the crew, some guests, Sergeant Pickles as well. Flo and I in the general will be back Wednesday night with also a Big Ten preview show that starts later. So watch those guys. Come watch us after on the video on demand. We have guests coming in from a number of schools to do a roundtable as well. So it's Big Ten Wednesday across our favorite channels. And thanks again. Please like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you all soon.